Okay, so here's the start on this frame rail on the 65. I've shown you before this rusted out area, and it actually rusted out all the way on the other side. You can see through the hole there. The nice part about it is they sell these pieces, and they're nice and heavy, good pieces. Already come with the nuts welded on for the brackets for the bumper, and holes pre-punched for various locations. So what I'm going to do is remove this fuel line, which is pretty important. I'm going to try to leave this fender apron in place because it's intact. I don't want to cut into it, but while I'm doing all this, I'm also going to remove this core support because there's a big section missing. As I do that, I'm going to also take out this inner fender apron and replace it. Now I already have, like I said, the bracket or the replacement piece for the frame and a core support. Now these parts aren't very expensive, so that's a good thing. This apron, a mistake was made, I guess, whenever either I picked up the parts or something and didn't check, but I went to test fit this apron, which is supposed to be the replacement part, but I don't know if you can read this or not. This is an apron for a 71 to 73 Mustang and Cougar. I have no idea how that ended up in the shipment or what. So the good news is I called Mustangs Unlimited, told them the problem, and I bought so many parts from them that they're going to take care of it. They're just going to send me an apron at no cost. And we'll get moving on this project and try to get this done as soon as I can. And this, my friends, is why plasma cutters are so cool. I just zipped out the edges there all the way around, and ta-da! This thing I bought from Harbor Freight. Really been happy with it. Makes things a lot slicker. Now I still have, of course, to remove the remaining metal, but as far as getting stuff out of the way, you're not going to beat a plasma cutter. Another thing I wanted to show you, this fender apron in particular. To remove it, there's going to be spot welds, and what I normally do is I take a little grinder, hand grinder, 90 grinders I like to call them, and I'll sand down the surface area where the spot welds are, and that's a quick way to expose them, you know, so you can grind through and break the weld loose. Now the reason I'm going to do that is because down here where it meets the frame, it overlaps, so you don't want to drill a hole. As I've said before in other videos, you don't want to drill a hole and then have to fill it. So I'm going to grind off the face of these welds, pop this loose, leave the frame alone, and then when I put the new panel in, I'll duplicate the location of these holes and weld these back in all the way up. And that way I've got a good piece of parent metal to weld to and not have to fill a hole or two holes. And now you can see what I was talking about. That's the original frame piece. These are existing holes put in by the manufacturer. So everything is solid now. When I come back and weld that apron on, I'll have good parent metal to weld to. As I continue on, I want to show you some other things. I've removed the bulk of the core support. I still have to come down here and take off this flange, not a big deal. And on this side, I started cleaning up the welds, drilling through in this case because I'm going to replace the piece of metal that apron welds to. So I'm going to cut off this frame rail. But what I really want to point out is as I remove this, I'm going to cut right here. Now it's between these welds for this brace and this gap. Basically, I'm just going to use that gap as a reference point. I'm going to cut off the box, the inner box on that side. And when I come over to the other side, that puts the inner box right about here. But I'm going to cut off the outer piece back here. Now the reason I do that is you don't want a doubled up weld or a two seam location. If you do that, it creates one spot that can be weaker than if you separate the two. And I may even bring this back just a little bit more. I'm not fully committed yet. But by moving this back, when I put the new box on the inside, I can weld it on the inside, and I can also put in a strap if I want to and reinforce it some more, and then put this outer plate on. And I'll show you that as I get to that point, but as of now I'm just breaking all the welds loose, and I'm going to leave this piece in place as well as the brackets and mounts for the suspension, and that way nothing moves and everything's in the same spot and I don't have to worry about it later. Okay, I made some good progress on this. I've got all the rusted out pieces cut out. That piece of the core support that was in here, took that out. Also, you'll note that on the core support there's a flange that goes forward. Now, I'm not going to be able to weld that here, but that's where the original piece was, right there. I've cut out the remainder of the bad chunk of frame rail, which is laying there on the floor, and I've also ground all the welds and cleaned them up so that I can start to get ready to install everything. Now, I'll show you a couple things. When I showed you earlier, I had a line on the inside, and that's where I cut this off, the inner box, and then the outer plate, cut it off back here. And again, that's so you don't have a one weld seam. You can split it up and make it stronger. Also, there's the welds of the bracket, and I'll just be able to weld on the outside back to this box. Next step is going to be trimming up the new piece, and you can see this hole right here, that's the same as that hole right there. So I can get a rough measurement from the edge of this hole to here. Now I'm going to cut it a little bit long, and I'll trim it down as needed to get it to fit nice and square. Up front here, you had a series of welds at the bottom, at the front, the side, and some at the top. Now, one thing I have to point out is on this new piece, you see this little extra piece sticking out? That goes to these welds. Now, when they make this piece, they just stamp it one shot. They don't worry about this extra little bend on the end of it. So whenever I go to install this, I'll have to bend this, get a 90, back to it, so that it creates a box. So that's bent in, and then when it gets up here, that's where these three welds come into place. So just a little point there, and I'm going to move on and start trimming this down and see if I can't get this done today. And there's the inner box, fit up real nice. All I gotta do is weld that in. See here, it fits really well to the brackets, and pretty good stamping. I mean, it matches the original really close. So I'll get that welded in, and then I'll move on to the outer plate as well. And there it is, welded in place. Nice big fat weld on the inside. I don't need to put any plate or backing inside of that. It's good and solid. I did blend down the weld up here already and down here for the new piece, and I also welded the front area where that box wraps around. I welded the apron back on. I still have to blend it, of course, and then I did just a light weld on top. It was nice and tight, but I want to blend that and make that smooth, so it's just a light weld on that outer seam. And also welded in the plug welds on those brackets. So the next step, after of course treating the inside of that, is putting this piece in. And again, that fits really well. I like it. It's pretty close to the original design, and I'll weld that in and drive on. I still have to wait for the left apron to show up, because I can't put I don't want to put the core support in until I have the apron in place. So for now, I'll just drive on this, and again, I will clean all this out, probably treat that with some rust seal back there, and put some primer on this area, maybe even a little paint, just to try to protect it a little bit more. I think you get the idea. You can see there I've got the half the seam weld done. I don't want to weld down towards my vice grips. All the other plug welds are just about finished, and it's really nice to weld thick new metal. It just has such a good buzz to it. And almost done with this side, and then I'll move on, try to get that apron taken care of. Well, upon further review, I've made a decision that I'm going to cut out this side as well. I thought about making a patch, cutting this out, but then I found some more rust on the bottom, so I'm going to do the same thing on the right side that I just did on the left side. And it's a good time to do it. The apron's out, so it's out of the way, and it won't take long to take care of it, and it's only about, I don't know, 40-50 bucks to get the parts from Mustangs Unlimited. So got to do it and make sure it's right and solid.